Welcome to the weekend. I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute. I'm not overweight. The camera adds 10 pounds, and there's like 5 cameras here. You do the math. From the Colorado legislature, Representative Don Beezley, congratulations. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, thanks so much. My pleasure.
So how are you enjoying the session as a newbie?
Oh, as a newbie, it's actually going incredible. It's pretty much what I expected, and we're having a lot of fun.
It's that bad, huh?
Yeah. Well, it's fun to be in the majority.
How would you know? You were never in the minority.
I'm having fun being in the majority.
Really? You do it again?
I would absolutely do it again.
All right. And from the Education Center at the Independence Institute, Ben DeGrow, thank you for being here.
Hey, great to be here as always, John.
Like the facial hair.
Thanks. Well,
can't quite do the whole beard, can you?
No, I'm trying to be like you, but not quite there yet.
All right. You've got education is always the top thing that's at the legislature. It seems next to the budget. And since it is the budget, you've got an interesting bill that's coming forward that's supposed to empower kids or empower families. Let's talk about it. It's called the Trigger Bill. And when we finish this, I want to get into Wisconsin as well, because that's some good stuff. What is the Trigger Bill?
Sure, yeah. It became called the Parent Trigger Bill. Originally in California was where this kind of a bill was run, and we're following up our own Colorado version of this concept. And the goal is to allow...
Sounds awfully violent.
Well, it actually doesn't have anything to do with guns, fortunately, so as it relates to education here. And basically what it allows parents to do is petition their local school board for low-performing schools. So this is working on our lowest-performing schools that are on improvement or turnaround plans already, but where parents believe they're not being served, their kids aren't being served, and they can actually go through a petition process to the local school board to say, you know what, we want change.
And let's say there's a failing school and the parents go, we want change. They go up to the school board and say, here are our signatures. Half of us or more want a change. Does the board have to do something under this proposal?
The board does have a responsibility to respond to the petition, and the petition really has 3 basic options for the parents. In that worst case, all hope is lost scenario, it could be a petition for closure of the school and priority placement of those students into higher performing schools. It could also be a petition that requests a request for proposal, an RFP, to the staff for what's called an innovation school. Or it could also be a petition to request conversion to a charter school. And the board could come back and say, well, you know, you can't close the school because we don't have where to put the kids, or there aren't good management options, or something along those lines. You would be able to appeal back to the state board.
How big of a problem is this really? Let me bring it over here. That schools just don't get the attention they need, or they're in the bad part of town, and parents are so unsatisfied they want out, but there's no place to go. Is this a solution looking for a problem?
Well, I mean, it's going to be a bigger issue in some parts of the state than others, in places, especially here in Denver, where there's a lot of schools on the failing school. And yeah, it is a bigger issue. Right? I mean, right now, under accountability, and Representative Beezley talks about these turnaround plans, the improvement and all this, if a school is on that status for 5 years, then the law says something has to be done about it.
5 years is a long time in a kid's life.
It is a long time, and if parents, you know, they can't wait for a kid to, you know, go through 5 years of this school. They need that option sooner. This empowers them to speed up that process. So I think I could see some utility for this in a lot of places where parents would say, this is something we could use to make a difference for our students.
A lot of people in Colorado don't even understand that charter schools are actually government schools. I think there's some sort of private school. What is this? You know, charter schools have not been treated very well in Colorado, and that a lot of school districts have put moratoriums on them. It's been tough to get enough financing to cover the building. You might be able to get the operating, but these guys are working out of, you know, burnt out Pizza Hut, and that's where the school is. Where does this trigger law go in effect with charters?
Sure. Well, you know, this is designed to be a solution to empower parents in negative situations, and 1/3 of the options is to go through to a charter status. And one of the nice things about charter schools, and I think there's 40,000 students on a waiting list for charter schools,
but not like the demand is high.
Yeah, not like the demand is high, and you know, and unfortunately, some districts have had kind of a turf approach a little bit towards charter schools, and you know, we want to be in control of what's going on in the school, and charters get exemptions to all sorts of control. And you know, one of the things that, you know, under the auspices of this bill will allow parents to drive that process. If that's the option that they think is best for them and their kids at that point in time, they can drive the process.
Even if the school board is one of those strong anti-charter school boards, like I know Fort Collins was, and Steamboat Springs had problems with this. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the charter schools, because a lot of people don't get that. 43,000 kids on waiting lists. What is the charter school, and how does it get founded?
Sure. So I mean, a charter school is a public school, publicly funded. And the difference is that it's run by a parent board or a community board. That individual school has that governance where the people there have the control over it, instead of having to wait for the district board to fix that.
So parents are in control of this school, and if the school board says, no, you got to run it this way, they don't have to. Is that the basic?
Right, and so they can set their own curriculum and teach them, you know, a different kind of, use different textbooks, different program, and implement things without having to go to the school board and try to resolve all those issues.
Am I wrong on this, that there are a lot of places that have been unfriendly to to charter schools, and therefore this is a long process, isn't it?
That's right.
It's not like this happens real fast.
Yeah, there are a few district boards out there where they're pretty friendly to charter schools and they want to help them, but in a lot of cases, it can be a long bureaucratic nightmare to get from the point of, oh, I have this great idea for a charter school to actually getting it open. It can take years.
Don says that there's sometimes a turf war. Is it a turf war, or is it just funding? That if I want to open up a charter school, it's going to mean less money someplace else?
Well, I think they both are tied in with each other, and especially right now with the way the budget looks and what the governor's proposed as far as education spending, then the fighting over the turf and the limited funding gets a little bit more intense.
Under the idea of a trigger law saying that this can happen, is that going to cost more? I mean, I don't know if you notice, we're a little tight on funds.
We are, certainly, and I think if you look at the dollars we have spent on education, I mean, we've something like doubled it in real terms, and yet we've been pretty flatline in terms of our results. And what this is doing is taking a look at those lowest performing schools and say, you know what, let's start getting something for our money. Parents shouldn't only be asking, you know, where's the money? They should also be asking, where's the results? And what this does is allows us to go to those lowest performing schools and actually start to make those investments pay, make those dollars pay. And this process in and of itself, where there be some minor process costs as it relates to a school board responding to a petition, sure, you know, potentially. It'll go to the state board and it'll just be a part of their normal process. So the costs in this are nominal, if anything. We haven't gotten what's called a fiscal note yet on this, but it'll be very nominal. But the payoff of being able to target those lowest performing schools and affect transformation and actually have those education investments start to pay off for those kids that are trapped in those situations.
I mean, Ben mentions that it takes 5 years for a failing school for the state to take notice and do something about it. That happened in, was it Pueblo? I'm trying to remember where that got close to happening. But it takes a long time for a failing school to go. And if you're a kid in first grade and it takes 5 years, you're already out into middle school. It doesn't do anything. On the trigger bill, what does it take? Yeah,
well, and as it relates to that point, you know, where you start to see massive divergences in performances around 3rd or 4th grade. So those problems start impacting those younger kids quickly. And in terms of the timing on this, there's the 2 lowest categories of performance, or what's called priority improvement plan or turnarout plan.
But you're really getting that educrat speak going. You've been down there, what, 3 weeks, and you're already talking like a bureaucrat.
Well, I think it's been 4 weeks.
All right.
But you know, the nice thing about this is, if you're in priority improvement status for 2 years or more, this can be implemented. If you're in turnaround status at all, it can be implemented. There's no 5-year window.
Let's just assume, and I know it's PBS, so it's not likely, but somebody watching actually has a job or maybe a real life. What the hell did that mean?
So basically, if the Department of Education has said this is a school that's not performing well, you've got a couple options as a parent to petition to change that school and help fix it.
How long until it's decided that a school is not doing well? I mean, is that something that takes years and years to decide?
No, it's actually an annual assessment process by the Department of Education. It happens every August, so that those edu-speak terms I use, those get assessed every year.
All right. So under this, parents go, we're in a failing school. How many parents need to sign on to a change in order to make that change with a school?
It's basically 50% plus 1. So if you have a child or children, it's a household vote. So it's basically 50% plus 1.
And they can say, change it.
They can say change it, and the petition itself would identify the kind of change that they're looking for.
Now, I know that you and I always look to try to get more choice and competition into schools. I obviously would love to see a voucher system pop out where people can take the money and go someplace else. But there's a fair amount of choice inside the network right now if you know how to use it, and I think a lot of parents aren't empowered enough to know what all those choices are. What are they? I mean, if you're not happy with what your kid's school is, and in a lot of districts, if you're going to Boulder, if you're going to Cherry Creek, you're likely going to be happy. If you're in DPS,
Right. So Colorado is actually one of the leaders in the country when it comes to public school choice. So within the public school system, having a variety of options. And Colorado is a leader in what we call open enrollment, which means you can take your child from the school they'd be assigned in their neighborhood to any other neighborhood school anywhere that would accept them, as long as they have room. Or a charter school, or in your school district, out of your school district. So there is a range of these public school options. I didn't mention virtual schools, for example. There's a lot of these choices. Schoolchoiceforkids.com.
Virtual schools, like kind of like a stealth school. You just walk in there and say, just imagine that there's a school there.
Cyber schools, school online, where the kids can even be at home learning on a software curriculum.
It's called Xbox.
Well, that would be what it would look like in your house.
Yeah.
And John, there's so much demand for choice, and Ben is certainly right. We're one of the leaders in choice and opportunities in that respect. There's so much demand for choice, it's actually outstripping what we can supply. We've been on the waiting list for now for 2 charter schools for 3 years for my kids. We're now on the waiting list of a 3rd charter school. And we actually had a neighbor who had a problem in our local school in Adams 12. They couldn't get the problem resolved. So they then applied to the same charter schools. They're on the waiting list there. Couldn't get in there, so they pulled their child, put them in private school, and so now they're paying their taxes plus their private school. And now they have to move out of, they've actually chosen to sell their house, take a little bit of a loss against market value to get it done quick, so they can actually move into a different school's home area to force their child into a different school, because under the open enrollment, which is a great idea, I love it, but there were no slots available in the area. So, and that particular school isn't one of these low-performing schools, but it's just so emblematic of the fact that we need more choices, we need more options. Parents need to be able to have more choices and more control over their child's education.
It happens here in Colorado. People have gotten a taste of it, and they like it. They like it. Where is it going to lead us? I mean, here in DPS, there's actually been fights over trying to change the management of some schools. It seems like Denver has become ground zero for a lot of those, well, taking on the union in DPS. Where are we on that?
Right. So one of the options that Representative Beezley mentioned for the parent trigger is the innovation, which is innovation school, which is like a charter school because it has a lot of the freedom from state law, but it's not run by its own parent board, and it allows you to convert a regular school into an innovation school. And we see a lot of these popping up in Denver. Cole Middle School is an example, Manual High School. And yeah, it's a lot of it's a turf war between the school and the district fighting for power. And I think what's really neat about the parent trigger is it shifts even more of the power into the hands of parents, who are the ones who really have the most invested in education.
This bill going to make it?
Well,
I know every politician thinks their bill's going to make it, but
absolutely, you know, we have to make the case for it. We'll get it out of the House, and
I think you will.
I do think that we will. There's good support for it, you know, and I hope we can reach across the aisle and have some Democrat support for it too. We'll see, and then we'll have to see how it fares in the Senate.
Isn't that a little bit of a problem? You're a newbie, which means that next time around they're going to be gunning for you. Will Democrats sign on to a good idea? And there are a lot of Democrats who are supportive of change and reform in education, but they're still D's. You're an R. They don't want to help you, do they? Well,
you know, and it was a hard race and a tight race, and I imagine they'll be targeting the seat to some degree the next time around. And actually, I mean, I think we saw a version of that today. We'll find out tomorrow, but maybe this is a segue into another charter-related area. I'm actually working on a charter facilities bill, which is a very common-sense bill. It makes sure that we're using empty buildings that we spent money on, and it actually puts around, I think it's $8,000 to $11,000 back in the classroom of a public school. And we're going to find out tomorrow whether or not
that is to use for charter schools to use empty space in existing schools, right?
In a district facility, yeah. So if they have an empty school building or something else along those lines that's suitable and appropriate for a school,
the bus barn and mechanics bay, is that? You know?
Well, we probably won't. You know, I mean, well, it depends on what they're teaching in the school, I suppose. Maybe. Yeah, you know, maybe if it's got a more vocational orientation. But yeah, I mean, it's just to make sure that, you know, we as taxpayers, we've all spent tens of millions of dollars on facilities that are literally sitting there empty because the school was closed or some other issue. And we're saying, you know what, it's a public school, let it use a public school building. And the way it puts money back in the classroom is that for charter schools that have to either buy a building or lease a building from a third party outside of the district, they actually end up spending somewhere around $8,000 on the low end to as much as $11,000 per classroom in additional dollars on facilities. So if we can let them utilize that facility that exists, that money stays in the classroom. Those aren't made up numbers. Those are real numbers of money that stays in the classroom without raising a dime in taxes.
Governor's trying to close down a prison. Maybe that could be a charter school.
Well, you know, we tried to address using state agency facilities as well in this bill, but we ended up not doing it.
Just something to think about.
Maybe they should just keep the prisoners there and convert it to a charter school and
see what happens.
See what happens.
We talk about this being bipartisan. There are a growing legion of Democrats, mostly inner city Democrats, who have been the leaders of school choice, and it's something that is a welcome surprise. But that movement is growing, isn't it?
It is, and you know what's really interesting is this parent trigger concept first started in California. It was started by a left-leaning, Democrat-oriented, group of parents. This wasn't a conservative idea hatched in a conservative think tank or something. This is something that liberal Democrat parents who got sick and tired of failing schools in California have brought to life. And so, yeah, the Democrats we've seen the last few years, they're the ones kind of pushing back against the unions in their own party to say, look, the kids we represent in these urban centers are the ones suffering the most, and ideas like the parent trigger and school choice.
Is this done anywhere else?
Yeah, there are a couple other states that are proposing it, like here in Colorado. Indiana is one, I think Georgia is another.
All right. Let me switch gears a little bit since we're on the topic of education. You're also dealing with the budget. You've got $1 billion shortfall to cover, which, by the way, is doable. It's not terrific, but it's doable. One of the big costs we have is salaries, including benefit packages. Out in Wisconsin, they're doing something that's pretty amazing. Let me bring it here first, because I know you've been following the Wisconsin battle. I want the Democrats to go in. I want to vote. Just lasso him, kidnap him, bring him back in. Is Scott Walker wrong for what he's proposing? What exactly is he proposing?
That's right. Well, when you kind of get into the heat of this kind of debate, and I mean, this is about a high-pitched political debate, as you find. You get a lot of misinformation. So I've heard on a lot of news reports that say he's taking away collective bargaining rights from public employees. No, he's limiting and reining in the power of public employee unions. There is no right to bargain for government workers. FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, the great Democratic Party leader, the great champion of the labor movement, in the 1930s talked regularly about how trying to bring private sector union models into government and collective bargaining was a bad idea.
Why?
I disagree with FDR on this. Why? Because we're, first of all, you can strike against the public interest. So government offers services that people have to take. If it's a private sector strike, you can say, I won't go to this restaurant or this dealer, I'm going to go to the competitor. In government, the services that are supposedly we need are gone because they have that power to strike over the services that are supposed to be for the taxpayer. They're negotiating with the taxpayers. In the private sector, it's workers negotiating against
What is he asking for that's so exceptionable? I mean, from what I understand, he wants to get their share of covering their own health care costs up to a whopping 12.5%. You work for me. Wouldn't you love to only pay 12.5% of your health care?
I've thought that many times since I've read the proposal.
Yeah, exactly. Is that the worst part?
That I'll take the opponents at their word. They've said that they're willing to concede on that point. What they're raising the fuss about is, among other things, he would say, you can bargain only over salaries. So local governments, like in Milwaukee and other parts of Wisconsin, where they have huge benefit packages for workers, he's going to say, take that off the table. That's unsustainable. It also says, among other things, something we did here in Colorado, or tried to do in 2008, which is stop governments from collecting funds for unions and special interest groups.
Government shouldn't be the tax collector or the bill collector for unions. Let me bring it over here. As a state rep, this has got to be fun because so rarely does a state house become the national center of political heat. This one's cool. First of all, would you ever leave the state to avoid a fight?
I think that's the first thing about this that really struck me, especially, you go through a hard election, you want to represent the people of your district. And in Wisconsin, they've got a big challenge, something they're trying to grapple with, that they need leadership on. And what were their response? They ran away and ran out of the state. They should be ashamed. The people in those districts should
Sure you wouldn't do the
them.
same thing?
Absolutely not.
Really? Remember, this is being recorded. They're going to chase you down to Nebraska when you run on the lam.
I would stand fast and certainly do what needs to be done. I mean, I think that's shameful. And the other thing that's interesting, on the election part of this, you learn a lot of things when you go through an election. And it relates to this union piece because I'm a taxpayer. I pay dollars that pay people, that pay teachers. Those teachers then take those union dollars, donate them to organizations that then fund the campaign of the person that's be favorable to them and campaign against me. And I thought, wow. That doesn't seem very fair.
No, you just didn't like it.
And it seems a little corrupt. I mean, I think that's really the problem when you look at collective bargaining for state employees is that they're spending their dollars out of their state salaries to make political contributions to get people elected to favorably deal with them.
Isn't that their right? I mean, they are individuals. They have First Amendment rights. If they want to give their money to someone running against Don Beezley, don't they have that right to do so?
Well, I think that's a fair question, but I think you do want to look to integrity in government, and you do have to look at the corruption aspects of
Oh, so let me
this
see if I get
relationship.
this. So if I run against you, it's corruption. Is that the way that works?
Only if you're using my money against me.
No, but
so yeah, it's a tricky equation, but
every state legislature now that's dealing with a budget shortfall, which is damn near all of them, has got to be looking at Wisconsin with kind of, even the Democrats have to be kind of looking at this going, you know, if we could cut those benefits, we could fill the hole here, and people don't have the stomach for a tax increase. What's been the fallout in under the Gold Dome here in Denver?
Well, you know, I mean, we're looking at, right now we're in that process of supplementals for the rest of this year, and then we'll be working on the entire budget for next year later on. And it really is a matter of looking at where are all the places that you can cut and that you'll be able to cut, and how does it impact everybody. And you do have to look at the manner in which you're compensating your employees. I mean, if you're a private business and you're struggling, well, let's take a look at General Motors, right? Billions of dollars in revenue, huge corporation, but they had zero flexibility as it related to their employees, and what happened? You know, one of the iconic corporations in the United States went bankrupt, didn't go out of business.
No, it didn't.
So,
we took care of that.
Yeah. With again with our money, right? So you know, I mean, I think that's the other part of it, is you have to have labor flexibility in order to be able to manage your business on a day-to-day and a year-to-year basis. And that's another thing that just very much concerns me, that we are going to see higher and higher salaries, higher and higher benefits. Fortunately, frankly, Governor Ritter's order allowing collective bargaining hasn't taken a lot of traction yet. There's not a huge number of state employees.
Because the economy doesn't let that happen. I can't imagine why this governor hasn't taken this opportunity to get rid of that executive order. And that executive order hasn't been in play much, but as times get better and the economy rebounds, my guess is that they will. We deal with a lot of teachers. You deal with a lot of teachers. We like teachers, but how is this Wisconsin blow up? And it's going to happen in other states. I think there's going to be a domino effect depending on what happens there. How are teachers looking in this? I mean, it used to be that you look at a teachers union and they help teachers be better teachers. I'm getting the sense now that no, they're just another union.
Yeah, well, when it comes down to representing, the interests of students, for example, or versus the labor movement solidarity, you can see whose side they're coming down on, especially in Madison, where they had the sickouts and drag students along out of the classroom, not for their educational benefit, obviously. But it is already going on in other states. Ohio has a similar bill that the legislature is listening to. Indiana and Tennessee are a couple other states that are trying to rein in public sector collective bargaining. Here in Colorado, though, there's no state bargaining law, and it's kind of up to each individual, city government and school district.
So wait a second. Let me see if I get this. So each school district gets to decide these union contracts with these lavish benefits. And if you don't believe they're lavish, you've got to go read the contracts. They're great. But the state is now paying the lion's share of the educational cost. Is that right?
Yeah, that is correct, John.
So we've got local control saying, here's the lavish contracts, but you, the state representative, you can't do anything about it, even though our state money is going to backfill everything in the local district. Yeah,
and it's something like 44–45% of the general fund, and growing under, potentially continuing to grow or get pressure from Amendment 23. How that works has been nuanced a little bit here the last couple of years. We've seen many things nuanced in the budget here the last couple of years. So there are actually probably going to be cuts forthcoming to the part that's not subject to Amendment 23 or interpreted as not being subject to Amendment 23.
Waiting for the lawsuit on that one. Because if Amendment 23, which I ran the campaign against, which says that every year the education spending goes up with inflation, and for the first decade actually above inflation, right. If that's in the Constitution and we're not following it, part of me says, sue. Let's see what happens. Yeah. Let's go ahead and what I predicted is going to happen, 23 is going to bust the budget again, and let's do it. What happens in Wisconsin? What do you think the final thing is? Will the Republicans hang strong? Will they be able to chloroform some Democrat hiding out in Illinois and bring him across the border?
In the end, I think that the Republicans probably are going to just barely make their way across the finish line in this. There's a lot of high stakes. Every day the stakes seem to get higher and higher.
Is the momentum going the other way?
That's a tough read. I mean, the public employee unions understand this is kind of like Waterloo for them. If they lose this battle politically, I mean, it undercuts their political power from other states and for future elections. So I say that here's the chance for a little fiscal sanity, and I think maybe the taxpayers will win this one.
We're seeing this pop up in a few different states. Of course, elections have results. So Chris Christie is doing this in Jersey. We've got Walker in Wisconsin, and then we've got guys in Connecticut saying, no, we're going to do it the old-fashioned way. We're going to raise taxes. In fact, here one of your colleagues wants to raise our income tax by $1.5 billion, something like that, over the next few years to do that. Does it have an impact what goes on in Wisconsin here in Colorado?
Well, I think it does. I mean, it certainly gets everybody's attention in terms of how are we going to grapple with what are our policies, how are we going to grapple with the budget, and what are the implications down the road. And I actually think it's very ironic that a $1.6 billion over a 3-year tax increase was introduced in the same week that I introduced, for educational, the justification was education, in the same week that I said, you know what, let's focus actually on results. Let's actually focus on the money that we're spending and what we're getting for it before we go out and we try to gouge the Colorado taxpayer for another $1.5 billion. Let's ask what's going on with the money we're already spending.
What is going on with the money we're already spending? Have we seen great impacts in education since we've passed Amendment 23?
Results are largely flat. So reading, math, all those things, you know, no great improvement, no great loss. It's just been kind of status quo.
Are you telling me there might not be a one-to-one correlation with money spent in education and results in education?
Given the current system we have, we shouldn't be surprised.
Amazing. All right, your bill's going to pass?
Absolutely.
Good, you'll bet your career on that?
It's absolutely going to pass.
People want some more information about what you do at the Education Center, want to learn more about their school choices. Where do they go?
A couple places, education.i2i.org, and the school choice information is at schoolchoice4kids, all spelled out, .org.
Ben, thank you. Representative, thank you. Thank you. Listen for me late nights on 850 KOA, and until next week, be good. See ya.